Well, hello and welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. We've got a lot to go through today. I'm very excited about some of the things we're going to talk about. There's the Brearly letter that was written by a parent to a very posh, expensive school in New York, talking about CRT, critical race theory, and some of those things. And there was also a rebuttal, which I will get to in very short order. Also, guess who just broke out of quarantine? Oh my goodness. This story came over on the Wall Street Journal. I thought it was a Babylon Bee article because it just is so ridiculous. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I also have the philosopher of science guy, Stephen C. Meyer, who's just written a book, and he's going to join me, and we're going to get into a nice in-depth conversation with him that I'm very excited about. If you're joining me on YouTube, welcome. Thank you for joining me here. And don't forget to subscribe. If you listen to me on mojo50.com, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me there. And if you wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with other people so they can also tune in and get a dose of truth and reality, I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to get more truth out into the marketplace of ideas. We are actively being silenced. In fact, I do have another story about that I'm hoping to get to. But first, let's go to this letter that was written by a father to Brearly. Brearly is a very posh school in New York. And the dad wrote this letter because he is fed up with all of the quote unquote anti-racism jargon that they're throwing around and the racist tendencies that they are now imposing on our children. And so the article, this article that I'm referring to is, it seems to be fairly neutral. But in any case, this father just got fed up. The elite Manhattan prep school's heavy-handed focus on race was weighing on him. His daughter's only in 6th grade, mind you, which, really? He's already seeing this and she's only in 6th. Why are they doing this to the children at this young age? Well, of course we know why. And it's because the earlier you get them, the easier they are to indoctrinate. It was a 1,700 word letter. Now I write articles and typically your general article really shouldn't be more than about 800 words. Most articles. If it's like an in-depth reportage, of course it goes longer. This letter was 1,700 words. The man's name is Andrew Gutman. He mailed it to 650 families, and then it went viral, and then it was published by Barry Weiss on her blog. And I have another thing that I want to bring you from over there. But in any case, the school is well known as being the school for Chelsea Clinton's daughter, Tina Fey's children or child, Drew Barrymore, Steve Martin, all have daughters that go there. And the tuition is $54,000 a year. Yeah. Okay. Famous alumni include, and it's a K through 12 school. Famous alumni include Carolyn Kennedy, Jill Clayburgh, Taya Leone, and Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. He listed in his treatise 10 objections while generally decrying this Upper East Side institution's obsession with race. He says, by viewing every element of education, every aspect of history, and every facet of society through the lens of skin color and race, we are desecrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said that politics encourage children to judge and be judged solely on the color of their skin. And so, in fact, that the school was basically desecrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. It goes on and on. He felt like somebody had to do this. Somebody had to bring attention to it. I don't know that he was prepared for the backlash that he got from writing this letter. He said the school managed to sneak in the increased emphasis on race during the pandemic when everyone was distracted. Well, that's recent. So really, what is he seeing? And that's going to be important when I talk about the rebuttal. He said, I don't know who's really driving this and nobody does. Frankly, I think we do. I mean, not necessarily to a person, but there is an agenda that's driving this. He said, so the school answered, in fact, it's being termed by this article that they fired back with, her own message. The head of the school fired back with her own message. She called his letter deeply offensive and harmful because, of course, you're not allowed to disagree with the status quo. She wrote, this afternoon, I and others who work closely with upper school students met with more than 100 of them, many of whom told us that they felt frightened and intimidated by a letter. I mean, doesn't that remind you of Sesame Street when one of the letters got angry and I'm the letter R and I'm red or something? I don't know. It's just, they felt frightened and intimidated by a letter. Okay, just think about that for a minute. And the fact that it was sent directly to their homes. Well, that I don't know. I don't know how he got the addresses of everybody, but apparently he did. And it was a lot of letters to mail out. So this guy put some effort in. I guess he gets an A for effort. Anyway, our students noted that as this letter, which denies the presence of systemic racism, crossed their doorways, the evidence of ongoing racism, systemic or otherwise, is daily present in our headlines. Okay. He dismissed the notion that the Brearly students would be frightened by a letter. He says the upper schoolers are afraid of getting a letter at their home. He said this in rebuttal to her. It's a really back and forth now. They're frightened and intimidated. The school has said its number one priority is to teach girls intellectual bravery and courageousness. Either they're lying or else they've done an atrocious job. In the letter, he described the school's vacuous, I'm quoting now, vacuous, inappropriate, and fanatical use of words such as equity, diversity, and inclusiveness. Well, clearly they don't want to include his opinion. So how inclusive are they? He says if Brearley's administration was truly concerned about so-called equity, it would be discussing the cessation of admissions preferences for legacies, siblings, and those families with especially deep pockets. But that's not what they're talking about. He does have a point there. If the administration was genuinely serious about diversity, it would not insist on the indoctrination of its students and their families to a single mindset, most reminiscent of the Chinese Cultural Revolution. He's referring to now the school's insistence that, that families sign a pledge and take part in ongoing anti-racist instruction. This is under building an anti-racist community. And I got this, the letter, this portion was available on the Washington Free Beacon. And it says, Brearly requires all members, including at least one parent or guardian, to participate in required anti-racist training and ongoing reflection. I don't know how they mandate reflection. You sit down, shut up, and think. And then this is in bold. We understand that everyone is approaching this work from a different stage and ask that you please share how your family values align with the school's commitment to creating an anti-racist and inclusive school community. And then you have to enter your response in a space provided online. This is one page of apparently an 8-page building an anti-racist community. It is let's see, Brearly has a diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racist statements. So they ask the parents to read those statements basically and sign up for them, which I mean is just, I don't know. It's like at some point you go, what can you do with this idiocy, this incredible indoctrination? And the parents are now being looped into this. Well, they have to be, because you can't really effectively convince the students if the parents are at home raising a ruckus, like this guy who wrote this letter. For goodness sake, he criticized the school for gutting the traditional curriculum and censoring books while repeatedly telling parents that its first priority is the, quote, safety of the children. This is an argument that I've had with the schools for quite a while. Why is their priority safety or socialization or anything other than education, right? That wasn't their original mandate. That wasn't their original. So they've morphed their purpose, and that is something that ought to be examined, if not rejected outright. Gutman said he most resented how, quote, Brearly has begun to teach what to think instead of how to think. And of course, that is more the case than ever. He got a lot of support. He also got a lot of backlash. Um, uh, uh, One person quoted, "This is a masterpiece and I want to buy this man a drink," while others pushed back. Somebody named Matt Mullen wrote, "He is wrong." I love that. We need to understand why there are such vast disparities in achievement and wealth between Black and white families. And don't dare for 1 minute think there is an easy, simple answer to this question. Perhaps there isn't, but the answer is not racism. That's not the answer. And the answer to that is not to be racist. The answer is not to then impose racism. And so that brings me briefly to the rebuttal, which I won't spend very much time on, but I will point out some really odd things about the rebuttal. First of all, it was written by a senior high school student, which I'm sure they are proposing is the most fantastic person to rebut this gentleman, which is really uncanny because this student who has just gone through this curriculum clearly has a bias. Clearly, I believe the student who wrote this considers themselves of color, although doesn't say that much. She said, "I'm afraid of an underground group of Brearly families who deny that I have a rightful place in the school or argue that I contribute to a, quote, lowering of standards." Okay, I'm going to take a quick break here. And if you're listening on radio, I'll be right back. But I am going to take a quick break because I'm posting these in segments on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, come back tomorrow and listen to the rest of this. And I will be back later.